We're very fortunate to have Jim tonight, but we're also fortunate to have him as a member of our board since last June. He's largely responsible for the fundraising puzzle you see there, and obviously for tonight's talk. He's the historian for the town of Groton. He's authored or co-authored 6 books regarding Groton's history, as well as over 200 articles. And you might have seen the recent one in the Groton Times and the Mystic Times about the bridge. As a matter of fact, there are some copies of that floating around. If they're available, they're free, just take them. But he's certainly prolific with regard to writing about the history in the area. Jim's a retired forensic evidence examiner with the Connecticut State Police, a graduate of the University of New Haven, and he served on both the town and the city of Groton councils and was the mayor of the town of Groton from 2009 to 2011. So without that further ado, Jim.
You heard enough? Really? I'm going to refer to my notes tonight because I'm getting old and I don't want to miss any slides, so it kind of keys me when I have to click for the slides. I want to thank you all for coming. It's a great turnout. What it actually shows is the interest in one of Groton's, or we call it Mystic Groton, landmarks. All right. It's also nice to see a lot of friendly faces out there that I've known throughout the years, gotten to know, and people that I'll get to know. Yes, Mystic's Baskel Bridge is probably one of the most popular and iconic landmarks that we have in Groton, or even southeastern Connecticut. And for thousands of visitors and tourists, as well as citizens, myself included, all right, we're kind of fascinated with that bridge, and we become mesmerized with it. I know, even I've seen it open 100 times. If I'm downtown Mystic and that whistle blows, I'm going to watch that bridge open and I'm going to watch it close. Now, this particular presentation has probably been one of the more challenging ones that I've put together in the last 15 or 20 years. It's taken approximately a little over, well, we'll say close to 2.5 months to put it together. And there's a reason for that. What we had is we have a voluminous amount of information, but it's small portions of information, number one. Number two, there are photographs. There are a lot of photographs, but unfortunately, most of them aren't marked. So it's like, you know, you're at home and people bring out the family photographs and they're not marked, and everybody said, "Who's that?" When was that? So that's the difficulty that we had. But tonight, I'm hoping that when you walk away from here, the reward that I acquire from giving a presentation is, geez, I didn't know that. I learned something. Well, I've learned a heck of a lot putting this thing together. And there's a lot of it out there. And before we start, with some of the pictures, you're going to find the quality is a little low. I'm not going to apologize for the quality of any photograph that I give, because at least we have a photograph. That's my philosophy with that. And those were part of my remarks. So you've heard my remarks. But now I want to get to the acknowledgement. This will give you an idea of where the information and photographs came from. So if you look at the Groton Public Library, Mystic River Historical Society, Mystic Seaport Museum, Indian Colonial Research Center, the Day newspaper, the Groton Times newspaper, the Stonington Mirror newspaper, which is an older newspaper, by the way, that's in the 1800s, Norwich Bulletin, Connecticut Department of Transportation, the Library of Congress, contacted them and received some photographs also. And of course, I have to include myself because I just mentioned to somebody in the audience before the presentation, I am not proud to collect photographs of Groton, and they will all end up at the library. And in one file on my computer, I have over 32,000 photographs of Groton. So I have to include myself in the Jim Streeter collection, all right? And then of course we have Carol Kimball, my mentor, Michael Spellman, Elizabeth Boucher, Marilyn Comrie, Kathleen Greenhaw, Lee Fort, Bob Sofovich, Janet Crossman, Marcus Mason Morin, George Savick, and Joy Agnella. Without those, this presentation, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight to look at it. But I also have to thank another person, and that's my wife. All right. Certainly, the patience and understanding she has for me taking 2.5 months off to put this together, and she's very helpful with it. So I guess being married for 58 years to the same woman is helpful. All right. So. Okay, we have to start off in the beginning. And yes, this is about the bridge, but we have to talk about crossing that river. It goes way back, and of course the information is very skim back there, but if we have to take an assumption that going back to the times when the American Indians and the settlers began to cross the river, they found means to do it. So the first thing they started fooling around with was footbridges, and a lot of them were logged bridges. And here's a crude bridge. You would almost say this is a one-man bridge. You're not going to walk a horse across this bridge. Then as they did develop where they wanted to bring their livestock across the bridge, they find the lowest areas, the contributories, or the narrowest areas of the river and build these. No, these are not photographs of the Mystic Bridge, believe me. All right. The next step were the canoes. The Indians were very, very adept at making dugout canoes where they'd take a large log and they'd chisel it out and then burn it out. And this is an example of a dugout canoe. They would also find large logs or trees and make much larger ones to which they could transport more than one person. And that is also a dugout canoe, believe it or not. The next portion of the evolution of crossing the river are ferry boats. And these are official, and we've got the documentation on it. In 1660, the Connecticut General Court appointed Goodman, and I guess the Goodman means it's just a good person, Robert Burroughs, to maintain a ferry for the Mystic River. The crossing is said to have been located at the Narrows, and that's the area between Groton Cemetery on the Stonington side and the halfway house on the Groton side. If I, talking to people familiar with the area, this would be approximately in the area where the I-95 highway bridge crosses, in that area there. And the fee for man and horse was 1 groat. A silver coin back then is worth 4 pence or 4 pennies. Then, and that's a picture of a flat-bottom boat that they would use, and they would propel it with oars. And then after they got sick of doing it by manually, they would put a sail on it, which was very helpful. Again, looking at these particular flat-bottom scows, I often wonder if you're crossing that river and the wind came up, how do you control where you're going to land? Right? Then the next step, in 1769, the first ferry closed, right? And it moved to an area south on Packard's land. Now, I'll go right to the area where it was located, Daniel Packard Inn, in that area there. Right? Joseph Packard ran the ferry using a flat-bottom scow with a rope ferry. This is where you pulled the ferry by rope across the river. Passengers on the Stonington side, this is interesting, would shout or whistle to get the attention. You would hope that either one, Mr. Packer wasn't sleeping, or two, wasn't consuming some good beverage, right? Because they're over there yelling, "Please pick me up." Right, the fees were set by the Connecticut General Court. 3 pence, which is a penny, for man, horse, or load, and load. 2 pence for ox and cotton, or cattle and cows. 1 fathom, which is 1/4 of a penny, per head of sheep or goats, and 3 fathom for man on foot. There's a rope ferry, and you can see the gentleman on the lower right of the boat pulling the rope, and that's how they traverse the river with that particular ferry. Now we'll get into what we're all here for, the first bridge. In 1818, citizens petitioned the state of Connecticut to build a bridge to cross the river. They claimed hardship had to travel 7 to 8 miles to take the road to the ferries. That's how far off they were. In 1819, the Mystic Bridge Company, chartered by the state to build a bridge. The total cost was $2,500, equivalent to $61,500 today. Now these figures, as we go along, we'll add the inflation figure to it, and by the time you leave, you go, oh my God. Right. The tolls charged 25 cents for coach, hack. A hack is like a taxi. 4-wheeled 2-horse carriage. 12.5 cents for a chaise, a sulky, or a 1-horse wagon. 5 cents for a horse and rider. 2 cents for pedestrians, also 2 cents for neat cattle. Can anybody tell me what a neat cattle is? I have a home, or a second home in Vermont, and we're very close to a dairy farmer, and I help the dairy farmer. I have not seen a neat cow. All right? 1 cent each for sheep or swine, and now I like this one. No charge for persons going to church or funerals, officers and soldiers of the military duty, or people doing business at the grist mill. I guess that would make me go back to church. It's located in the general area where the present Pascal Bridge is today. It was completed in May of 1819. It was a wooden bridge. There were no piles driven. The frame was into the mud. It was 230 feet long. It was a hand-operated drawer, the drawer being in the middle, with a 26-foot clearance. So you had 26 feet of river to traverse. It had to be built they had to build 600 feet of roads in Groton and 300 feet in Stonington to connect with the bridge. The second bridge, and I didn't show you a photo because I want to tell you this. Remember, back in that period of time, the wood that they used was not treated. We didn't have the creosotes. So the pressure treated lumber and wood like this. So within a short period of time, due to the exposure of the water and the extensive use of the bridge, it became in despair and it couldn't no longer be used. So a complete rebuilding, a new bridge, a duplicate of the first bridge was built. And that was completed in 1813 by Colonel Amos Cliff. What I wanted to mention was that Amos Cliff, right now, a lot of people are involved with the situation involved in 17 Gravel Street. Okay? Amos Cliff owned the property where the house was built. He did not build the house, but he was the owner of the property that house sits on. So when I came across that name, I said, you gotta be kidding me. Good coincidence.
The rope bridge that you talked about, that they would put a rope apparently from one side to the other.
Yes.
And then somebody would just pull along the rope.
That's correct.
So how would other boat traffic not get like
They would lift the rope. They would have to lift the rope, or it was lowered into the water, and because you didn't have power motors then, and they could go over it. Right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, with that first bridge, as well as the second bridge, I found an interesting news clip from the late 1800s or whenever it was. A person caught taking a passenger across the river in a boat, had to pay double the price to the bridge tender. Uh-huh. All right, so now we're on to the second bridge. And as I indicated, we didn't have the creosotes to preserve the wood. So they had to build a complete new bridge, sister bridge, right next to it. And I mentioned about the Colonel Amos Cliff. And there's one picture, it's an etching. I'd like to move, but I'm not going to because it's being taped. All right. Showing the bridge. And it's an engraving by John Barber in his 1836 edition of Barber's Historical Collection. Now, before I show you this picture, I'm going to say, I have probably spent 3 hours looking at this picture. I cannot find the bridge. Now, 3 of us at the museum yesterday looked at that picture, and we had 3 different locations. So, but it's there, and in the write-ups it says the photograph of the bridge is in this etching. Have fun. So now we'll go to the third bridge. And you know, it's interesting. I'm sure a lot of people up until recently, I know I wasn't aware until more recently of the number of bridges that preceded the Biscayne Bridge. So that's what I'm, you know, a great deal of learning I experienced by doing this research for this. In 1854, Henry Latham built a new wooden bridge. This was the first drawbridge, and it was opened by oxen. In April, it should be on April 13th, 1854, Groton and Stonington jointly purchased the bridge and the franchise of the Mystic Bridge Company for $8,000, $186,000 in today's value. But the good thing, they removed the tolls. So that was very, very thankful of the citizens that they did that. And it was maintained, it had to be maintained by both communities after they purchased the franchise. This is the fourth bridge, or this is the bridge that we're talking about. This is the third bridge. So we're fortunate to have the photographs of those. The fourth bridge is a temporary bridge. And we're going to call it an actual bridge because you had to have a temporary bridge because you tore the other bridge down to build a newer bridge. So in 1862, the new bridge was needed to replace the third bridge. Groton and Stonington had become major, and I mean major, maritime and shipbuilding centers. And this bridge, the older bridge, bridge number 3, showed obvious signs of weakness and often shook under heavy loads of timber. And I can just imagine being on that bridge. There was a large increase of traffic, and it overburdened the draw facilities, and it ultimately closed to traffic, and horses and horse vehicles had to go upriver to a more shallow area to cross the bridge or across the river. A footbridge was built just south of the bridge. So in 1866, Groton and Stonington voters approved building a new bridge. It was necessary to construct a temporary bridge. First, that bridge was a pontoon type. So people that have belonged to yacht clubs, you know the floating pontoons, that's what the bridge was like. Okay. It was just south of the new bridge being built. It had no railings. Not particularly safe on a dark night or if you had a few beverages. Right? Unfortunately, there's no photographs available that we're aware of that bridge. There may be, however, like I said, we have a lot of photographs that are unidentified. So you want to be accurate as you can, so that's what we did. There's no photograph available of that temporary bridge. Now the fifth bridge was completed in September of 1866. It was the first iron bridge structure with a wooden deck. It was built by A.A. Bridge of Springfield, Massachusetts. It was a rotating bridge on a stone foundation. and it was 55 feet clearance on either side. A carriage fastened to the bridge would turn the track, turn the draw. And it was done by means of a wreck bar, as they call it. It cost $25,000. We're getting up there now. So that's $356,000 today. By 1884, this bridge required repairs, just like anything else. A special boardwalk was built for pedestrians, and vehicle traffic was suspended for several weeks while they did this repair. I think some of you in this room will remember when we experienced the closure of the bridge. Not happy campers. There is your first iron bridge. Notice the sign up at the top? Trot not your horses on the bridge. All right? This is the bridge with a nice horse going across. You can see the wooden pier in the center. That's where it turned. We have several photographs of this particular bridge. This is a circus. And there's two photographs of this circus. There's the one with the elephants. Now this is reportedly in 1898, although I found a document that reported that it was 1900. So I spent, with these eyes that need cataracts, all right, or taken care of, 3 days looking at newspaper articles on a microfilm, trying to find an exact date for that parade or the circus. Sorry, folks, I couldn't find it. Okay. As you notice the signs, and that's what we're going to get into. The previous things you saw, several signs warning people to walk their horses. Prior to 1885, the primary sign hanging above the bridge said, "Trot not on this bridge." I gather people were confused with that. Maybe they were, marathon people. They didn't know what the trotting meant. All right. So in 1885, they changed it to "walk not your horse." So what we did was we had "trot not on this bridge," and it was changed to "walk your horses." Now the purpose of this sign relates to an unsubstantiated physics theory, believing that the noise created by a galloping horse would create a harmonic motion that might cause a bridge to collapse. And reportedly, and I remember this, and I'm old, but I'm not that old, but back in the 60s when I went in the Army, and we marched across wooden bridges, they told you to break your cadence so you didn't create this rhythm. But it supposedly hasn't been proven, thank goodness. The sixth bridge, another temporary bridge. 1903, the Department of Trolley System, or development of the trolley system to run from Groton Ferry Landing off of Thames Street to Westerly, Rhode Island. All the necessary tracks and infrastructure to be completed by late 1904 or early 1905. They needed a bridge sufficient to support not only the vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic that normally use the bridge, but now to handle the trolleys. So a temporary bridge was to be built first. And the construction of that began in early May of 2004 and opened in a month and a half. So they put a lot of work into that.
Wrong date.
Wrong date?
2004. Anyway.
Whenever I have the wrong date, where's the wrong date?
Second from the bottom begins. In early May
Should be
2004.
1904.
Yeah.
May 1904. You corrected that last night.
Third bullet.
Thank you.
We were just testing.
That was a test. Now, interestingly, at the same time, remember when the bridge is being built, the tracks are being laid from Buckwanick to Mystic, from Mystic to Westerly. The powerhouses to operate were all being constructed at the same time. So when I'm researching this, I'm seeing, well, this is being completed, the trolley for the drawbridge. So does it relate to the drawbridge? No, it just related that they wanted to get to the drawbridge. There's the temporary bridge. I think this is probably one of the nicest photographs we have. I love the women and the clothing that they have on the side of that bridge.
Yeah.
But you notice there's still a sign posted on that about not trotting your horses. There's a bridge in the open position. What's neat about this photograph, notice the sleigh in the foreground. Now, when the bridge was closed, the Iron Bridge was closed, and they built this temporary bridge for the business people. It's just like when they repaired the one in the 2003 through 2010. They wanted to keep their business going, so they took out advertisements. Here's one here from the Morgan Brothers ice cream. We're still selling ice cream, even though that bridge is down. We're selling ice cream. Right? Now I find this when they tore the old bridge down, and this is typical of any project out in the open, in the public. Notice the last sentence. They're tearing down the old bridge. The men have a fair-sized audience at all times, and a great deal of advice and comment is given freely by them. So naturally, we have our citizen supervision taking care of things for us. The seventh bridge. This was a steel frame swing bridge. It pivoted on the central steel caissons. It was manually operated. It was painted with a tint of green. It opened September 20th of 1904. The temporary bridge, bridge number 6, was immediately torn down. Bridge opened, like we already have that. Interestingly, there was no fanfare. Obviously, there was some tension. There was some conflict as far as why are we closing these bridges and building new bridges? Because if you'll read this one, the bottom, there will be no celebration on Thursday for the townspeople because the people believe they have nothing to be enthused about. Now, wasn't that a kick in the face? There's your tint of green bridge. This is from a postcard. There's a horse and wagon coming off the bridge. Morgan Brothers ice cream. All right. There's the bridge in the open position. There's a trolley car. Now we had our choice of several photographs with trolleys. Some of them open trolleys and some of them covered trolleys. This is the covered trolley crossing the bridge. And then of course we have the horse and wagons. And an interesting thing, I've given a presentation on this, what you don't see in a photograph. I'd love to take my photograph and enlarge it. It's a grocery wagon. So it's quite interesting what you can see if you enlarge a photograph. This is right after World War I. There's the troops marching over the bridge. You know what I noticed there? Are they breaking cadence? No. So fortunately the bridge didn't fall down. But that's probably one of the best pictures I have. I really thoroughly enjoyed that photograph. The eighth bridge, another temporary. Within a few years after the new steel frame bridge was built began to experience problems. Heavy traffic caused the foundation to settle. And also caused it to stick open. I remember doing a presentation on the bridge that crossed New London Thames River, and the engineering didn't think ahead, and they built it for a certain weight locomotive, and within 5 years the locomotive had become 3 times the weight. And this, I pictured this with this bridge. Because of the weight, the tracks were like this. I wouldn't want to be on a train trying to get the tracks together. So I think that's what happened here. They added an electric motor because of the problems opening the drawer, but that didn't seem to help, and they considered it an expensive headache. By 1920, due to the expense to keep the bridge operational, Groton, Stonington, and the state of Connecticut developed a plan to build a new bridge. A temporary bridge was built just north of the previous steel bridge, crossing Gravel Street to Home Street. The temporary bridge opened in July of 1921. No photographs of that temporary bridge are available. The 9th bridge. After the temporary bridge was completed, the old steel frame bridge, including its piers, was removed. The new, or a new Bascal counterweight design bridge was built. It was called Brown Balance Beam Light Bridge, after its designer Thomas Brown. It was the first bridge of this type that was built in America, and work began on it in July of 1921, July 10th to be exact. By March of 22, the cement foundations were there, and they used about 2,000 cubic feet of cement. The bridge opened in July 1922. There we are. That's why we have a celebration coming up July 19th, 1922. I have an article that says that it opened prematurely on July 12th for pedestrian and vehicle traffic. However, the official opening was July 19th. Right. Total length of the span was 218 feet, 33 feet wide, with 5-foot sidewalks. In a closed position, it was about 44.5 feet tall. The total cost, $254,000, equivalent today, $3,130,000. This shows looking south when the second steel frame bridge was taken down. And in all likelihood, this was taken from the temporary bridge that they built. With the bridge down, this is looking towards Groton, looking west. They are looking east towards Stonington. And I had an email from a gentleman whose grandfather ran a store here, and they were relaying the story where they could see between the floorboards the river down below it. That was an interesting email to receive. There's the bridge without the weights. Again, under construction. We have a lot of photographs. The Department of Transportation provided a lot of photographs, we were very thankful of that. If you look to the upper right, you see the wooden case for the cement blocks. So that was during construction. Here they are building the decking. The decking you had the trolley tracks, but it was also wood with an asphalt covering. I thought you might find that interesting because we're going to discuss that a little later too. And there's the completed bridge in 1922. Now we're going to go to a different angle of this, or a different aspect of it. In 1937, there were upgrades to the bridge. Because the trolley service was discontinued in 1928, there was no more need for the trolley tracks, so they were removed to widen the bridge for regular traffic. You can imagine that bridge with trolley tracks and traffic. Very narrow, especially when that trolley car was coming. In fact, there are articles that say that the regular traffic would wait for the trolley to pass because it was too narrow. The wooden block and asphalt pavement decking was removed and replaced with the T-mesh steel material. It took about 2 months to complete. So people were very surprised to hear that at one time it was a wooden with asphalt decking on it. That's when it was first built. You can see the wood deck and you can see the trolley tracks. This is back in 1922 when they were constructing it. There's a horse coming across. You see the tracks. So picture a trolley with two of those vehicles. Very, very narrow. This is the construction period. They closed half a bridge at a time. And if you look to the lower left, you can start to see the steel grating. Then they closed the other half, and you can see the steel grating there also. There's a horse walking on that steel grating. Now, the previous steel grating, there was nothing underneath it. You looked right through to the river. I'm sure that horse was probably a little spooked. Maybe this is the other reason. This is the town of Groton's highway department taking care of the snow, and maybe you didn't have to push it to the side because it fell through the bridge. Now, here's the question. Is the present bridge number 10? In the mid-late to late 1880s, the bridge began to experience various mechanical problems. Some of us remember these. Well, if you're my age, you do. Many problems caused delay in opening and closing the bridge, and most of the problems were associated with the age and the constant use of the bridge. That bridge opens about 2,000 times a year. That's a lot of use. The Connecticut Department of Transportation developed a two-phase rehabilitation and refurbishment program, cost $14.9 million. And that's, what do I say, 2000 to 2013. So add the years to it, and today it's worth $17.5 million. And that's over a 13-year period. Phase one, they replaced the open grid steel decking system, replaced the sidewalks, repaired the concrete counterweights. I remember when they did that. They ran into a problem with it. They thought I guess there was rebar in it and they didn't realize it. Right? And they took quite a while to fix that. And then phase two, phase one was 2000 through 2004. And they would periodically have to close the bridge for 50 hours or so over a weekend. Then they gave this phase two, replacement of the operator's house. It used to be one story, now it's 2 stories. The operating machinery and electric control systems, repaired the structural steel, and painting of the superstructure. My understanding is that now everything is pretty much, you push one button and everything, all the bells and whistles happen all at once in unison. So that's what they had to replace that there. Now, here's the answer to that question. Is it bridge number 10? The answer is no. Look at the top of that. That's the plaque that's on the side of the bridge. It says 1922. So we are going to celebrate the 100th anniversary of that. So it says 2022 up there, so that's 100 years. This is what our Mystic River Bridge looks like today. And one last thing, by the way, and many of you realize this already, available in the back of the room are some picture puzzles. And There's the puzzle itself, and it shows the Charles W. Morgan passing through the bridge in 1941. There's only a few of them left. They're reasonably priced. It is a fundraiser for the Mystic River Historical Society. When and if these run out, which I believe they will very shortly, the society will probably acquire other puzzles of the bridge in celebration of the 100th anniversary. Thank you for attending tonight. And I always say good night with a night picture. I will try to answer some questions. Unfortunately, I am not a bridge builder.
You got time.
I have a philosophy. Do not make your presentations over 35 minutes. With our little technical difficulty, it's been 35 minutes. So thank you and have a good evening, folks.
Questions? You want to take some?
Yeah, I'll take some questions if you, yes. Now, again, you have to speak up because I have a hearing.
There's a crash barrier added on the east side at some point. Was that just general safety, or was that because somebody drove in the river?
From my knowledge, they anticipated that happening, so they did install that. And it's a good thing they did, and when I read that, I said, that's a good idea. Yes.
Jim, when they were using the pull bridge, the picture showed one individual, but we're talking a boat was pretty well loaded. Was there only one person pulling, or was there one in the front of the boat?
Let me give you a facetious answer. On a bad day, it was one person. On a good day, it was more than one person pulling that rope. But it's like, and if you've been out on a boat before, once you get it moving, it'll move for you.
Well, like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a plan for the bridge for the next 5 to 10 years? And you know, of any plans for the future?
The plans for the bridge in the next 10 years?
Yeah, when's the next one coming?
I read an article that actually said that with these new repairs, we can look at a good 25 years before it will need any attention. All right? So hopefully that holds true, because we're getting around there. All right? But as you can see by the increase in prices, it'll be a considerable cost to do repairs. Yes, sir.
During the period when these temporary bridges were in place, did they interfere with the passage of ships up and down the river, with all the shipbuilding going up the river?
Yes, and that's why I indicated either a drawbridge or a swing bridge. All right, and I gather that the traffic going up the river would have to yell to the tender, and there were tenders there, all right, that had to do the swinging, and that's how they would open it.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Just a real quickie, not so much the bridge so much, but was it the main brick when they built that, decided where they're gonna move the flagpole across the other side?
I don't think the bridge had anything to do with moving the pole from the Groton side to the Stonington side. But I did come across an article when they moved that.
Oh, all right, so I just wondering, because I'm thinking maybe when they built the main block, because that's probably where the spot was somewhere.
It could be feasible. That's the reason why I've never run across the reason why they did that. Because I personally said, geez, I'd like to have that flagpole on the Groton side. Yes, sir.
From looking at so many photos, do you have any sense of a change in the river height?
You know, it's an excellent question. The question was, with all the changes in the bridges, is there any indication that the height of the river has risen? It's a good question. I don't know, but it is a very good question to ask. Maybe some of the bridge tenders, previous bridge tenders, they may have knowledge, because they're there every day, and some of them have worked for years there and retired off of the bridge. Okay, well, thank you very much.
One last thing. Jim? Thank you.
Okay, Steve, thank you.
Thank you very much.